Ghana, it's okay to go to another African country. So long as it's Africa, you're going to invest, I don't have any problem. And so I'm yet to go to Zambia, but I'm going to start from here. Let me see if Mr. Mweemba will whet my appetite to plan a trip to Zambia. So if you are just joining us, please subscribe, share the live stream link to your colleagues, to friends to watch. But my guest today is a man of many coats. He's worked in different industries, and finally, he's working in the agriculture sector. And he's in the person of Mr. Bruno Mweemba, but he's popularly known in Zambia as Mr.
Nuka.
Panuka. So that's how he's known in Zambia. If you're in Zambia, I'm sure you know this man. He's a renowned agriculturist. He's a mentor. He's a business coach. He works with the UNDP or UN. Is it UN or UNDP?
Yeah, UNDP. Yeah.
UNDP.
Environmental finance. Yeah.
Great. On a project they just launched yesterday. That's why it's in Ghana on climate finance. We'll talk briefly about that. But the whole interview is to enlighten those of you who want to go to Zambia purposely for agri investment. Thank you very much for
Pleasure's mine for welcoming me here.
We are glad to have you in our studios.
Well. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So, for those who don't know you, let's briefly get to know who Mr. Mweemba is.
Okay. So, yeah, Bruno Mweemba is my name. From Zambia, born, bred in Zambia. And like you indicated, I'm actually made of different professions, if you like. Originally, I'm actually from the military.
Oh!
Yeah. I used to be in the Zambia Air Force way back, but then went into banking. And now I've been quite a lot in development finance. But professionally, I'm a chartered accountant. I'm not an agriculture person, but a business person. So originally a chartered accountant, but I have gravitated much more into development finance and environmental finance in the latter part of my work. But for the last 15 years, I've been a farmer and also an agribusiness mentor.
Okay.
And really pushing the agenda around farming as a business, because I see that that's where the gap is. I think there's a lot of focus on the agronomy part, the science of livestock and all that, which is good. But I think we have a missing piece in terms of the focus on farming as a business, and that's what we bring to the table.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So one would ask, did you resign from the military or you ran away? Which?
No, I didn't resign.
Okay.
There's a phase where you can actually be excused after you've served for a few number of years.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, I was in finance when I was also in the Air Force back then. And then, I went into banking, corporate finance.
Okay.
And, so I've really been a finance person through and through. In different places where I've worked. Yeah.
Okay. So the topic is exploring Zambia's untapped potential for agriculture investment. For those who haven't been yet, paint a picture of how the agriculture industry in Zambia looks like.
Well, agriculture is like a big thing in Zambia. It's the mainstay besides mining. But of course, you note that we're so big on cereal, especially maize, which is a staple, crop. And I think we are amongst the biggest producers of maize in Africa. Of course, these climate-induced related risks for the last 2 years have actually affected the general productivity. But generally, we're big on that, and mainly the cereals. Horticulture hasn't really been a big thing, but that's the kind of space that I'm in myself.
Right.
So you actually note that really quite big on the cereals, soybeans, but mainly maize is the biggest.
Okay.
But I think there are all these other emerging, crops, and a few other big commercial farmers that are in things like, sugarcane, plantation. I think those mainly are for the commercial guys, but mainly only what I would call the small scale farmers, things like maize and much more on the soybeans, and a bit on horticulture amongst our mothers. Yeah, that's what you get to see in terms of the general outlook of the agriculture sector.
Okay, right. Let's look at the farming season that you have in Zambia. Over here in Ghana, We have 2 farming seasons. The major season has started as we speak.
Okay.
The rains have come, people have plowed, those who are transplanting are busy on the field. When it comes to Zambia, how many farming seasons do you have?
I don't know whether I would call it unfortunately or fortunately, but I think it's unfortunate given that we envy the countries that have like 2
farming seasons
because then it boosts your productivity. For us, unfortunately, we usually start, traditionally it's been around October, November, but with this climate change, that has been shifting around. So you actually note that like this last farming season, the rains actually intensified in January. But traditionally, it's around November, December, January, all the way to around April, May. And like I said, since cereal, especially maize, has been the biggest, you find people start harvesting now post-May into June.
Exactly.
So that's traditionally the kind of rain season that characterizes Zambia. But again, like I said, from a farming as a business perspective, ideally you shouldn't be confined to the rain season. And I think for the commercial farmers, especially now that we had these drought issues, we've actually seen that people are actually doing irrigated maize.
Okay.
So you actually note that they actually do 2 cycles, but through irrigation. But generally, you find most of the people are still under rain-fed agriculture. But if you're really farming as a business, you should actually be looking at being in the market throughout the year.
Okay.
And for us, we don't have off-season. Any time we farm, given that we are into horticulture farming as an enterprise.
Right. So when an investor is eyeing Zambia as a country to come and invest in agriculture, which areas would you advise, given the fact that you have been in this space for some time, which areas would you advise for me to look at? Well,
if you've got, an off-taker, maize is still a big thing, given that it's the staple crop. Without obviously necessarily overcrowding, the locals. I think that is still a big thing. But I think there's other more nuanced, areas like horticulture that I'm talking about, and other exotic kind of agricultural produce that you can actually venture into, where most of the locals do not have the capacity, especially in terms of irrigation. So I think those are huge opportunities, especially if you can find, off-tech, especially outside the country.
Okay.
The climate, like you indicated, is extremely very good for agriculture investment.
Okay, right. When we talk about the area of farming, there is this rain-fed, there is irrigation. In Zambia, how is your system or practice like? Because here in Ghana, we are largely rain-fed farming. And so the moment the rains mix up, everything goes down the drain. How is the picture like in your end?
I would probably say it's an African thing. It's an African thing.
There's no difference, huh?
I wouldn't actually say there's a major difference.
Okay.
Predominantly, that is that's the same picture that you actually see in Zambia. That most of the people, when you talk about farming, they're very dependent on rain-fed agriculture. Which again, like I said, our ethos, and mantra as an enterprise is to try and push that people should actually see agriculture opportunities even beyond, the rain season. You can do rainwater harvesting, but also have, boreholes. If you're lucky, you are near the river. The returns of a farming enterprise actually get boosted if you can actually be in the market throughout the year. And I would actually give you one example. If you're doing what is called B2B, business to business, and probably you get a market access with the chain stores. When you step up and say, I'm going to be a supplier of, say, sweet pepper or whatever, they're looking at an all-year-round supplier, not a season one.
Okay.
So if you really want to get in that kind of market, people eat every day. So you can't afford to be a rain-fed,
farmer. Okay.
Because then the other 6-7 months, you're actually not in production and you lose out in terms of revenues. So part of farming as a business, basically, I think, is to see the other part of the season as an opportunity for someone to actually cash in. But then you need to re-engineer how you do business in terms of your irrigation setup. And that's something that we've actually been working on as an enterprise, which has pushed us to really supply most of the chain stores like ShopRite, Pick and Pay throughout the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So I think what the topic versus farming as a business is aligning, because if I'm investing, I'm investing in business and I'm looking for a return.
Exactly.
Before I can comfortably do farming or do anything, I'll need a location or a land.
Yes.
In Ghana, it's either government, family heads, chiefs, or individuals who have lands. When I am coming to Zambia to invest in agribusiness, do you sell land outright to foreigners? And if not, what is the system? How do I access land to do my agribusiness investment?
I would actually say I think there's lots of similarities with how things play out here. There's quite a lot of land that is still in traditional hands, and usually that is your entry point when you're actually looking for agricultural, land. The Zambia Development Agency, I think, does facilitate, for investments in that kind of, venture, depending on the quantum of money that you're bringing into the country, and you get an investment license. But largely, you actually not that you still have to go usually through this traditional leadership. But I think there's a huge push now with the current government to look at partnerships with the locals. So if you find a local who has land, and then you bring in probably expertise, market access, the financing. So I would actually say potential entry point is actually partnering with the locals. Outright purchase of land might be a bit problematic. And I think obviously there's quite some pushback for those kind of arrangements.
So partnership
is
the
really
way to go.
Is the way
makes
to go.
It easier.
It makes it easier. Find a local who has land, and then you bring in expertise, resources, irrigation, and of course access to market, like I indicated. And the current president is actually pushing in that direction, the issue of partnerships. And I think there's quite a lot of countries that are actually looking at that. And it's part of also de-risking your investment, given that you've got a local person that helps you to
navigate
some of the processes. So it's again, from a farming as a business, I think it's part of de-risking, like I indicated, that you find a partner. But of course, just like any other country, do your due diligence on the partnership so that you avoid being duped. But I think generally Zambia is a country that is known for peace. I wouldn't say it's completely sanitized from fraudulent activities, but generally quite a very peaceful country, and the chances that you might be duped, if you just apply yourself in terms of some basic due diligence, are very minimal.
You'll be safe.
Safe.
So beyond the individuals or the locals that an investor should partner in case they are looking at farming as a business, what are some of the recognized institutions that I can walk to seek for guidance, to seek for direction? So here in Ghana, apart from the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, if you're thinking in the area of export, maybe farming here and exporting out, you have to go to places like GEPA, Ghana Export Promotion Authority. You have to look for the associations like VPEC, Vegetable and Fruit Farmers Association. We have FAGE, who are made up of just exporters. So when I come to Zambia, what are some of the agencies, renowned, recognized agencies, that you would also, again, advise me to consider visiting and making my checks?
Well, the first, obviously, is the Ministry of Agriculture. That's your first entry point. But beyond just the Ministry of Agriculture, we have the Zambia Development Agency, and their role is basically to facilitate, these kind of deals. And right now, I think the government is really pro foreign direct investment. And so you find that the political climate right now, in terms of being receptive to FDI, especially when it comes to issues around agriculture, energy, is quite big. So I think the Zambia Development Agency is a very good, entry point. Minister of Agriculture, when it comes to agriculture. But of course, again, there's quite a few probably, prominent individuals that are in this space that might point you in certain directions. But if you're looking at the institutional structures, I think these two, Minister of Agriculture, Zambia Development Agency, and of course the Zambia National Farmers Union, which is a union for farmers. I think they also have quite a lot of very juicy insights that they might give you in terms of how not to do investments and how to do investments. They will understand that landscape.
Okay, great. Now let's look at market access. Because if you're advising me to do farming as business, I'm investing my money, so I'm expecting a return.
Sure.
How is your market access like? Do you advise I focus on a domestic market, or I should look at exporting? Do you advise I sell raw, or I add value? So what would you advise a potential investor?
Well, I think a potential investor, when it comes to local, investment, value addition is really the way to go.
Okay.
The way certain products are, if you're investing in, say, tomatoes, you're investing in, the common produce that people eat, the
Pepper,
market, is
onions.
really big. Like onion, we still have quite deficit, points. But again, these are a bit seasonal. But then if you're looking at all year round and you've got the means, say, onion, in terms of storage, drying facilities and all that, the market, even locally, is huge. Especially if you can keep it, off season when not everyone is doing it. But then for other, produce like, horticulture products, which is the space that I'm in, I would actually say the best is to look at, export. I've been to places like Dubai, and you actually note that the biggest challenge that most of the locals have is, how do I get my produce out there?
Okay.
And is the economics okay
Right.
for me to still remain competitive versus all these other countries that are looking at those markets? So I would actually say export for horticulture is the way to go. Grain, onion, and some of these common, I think the local market is still big enough, especially during the off season when not everyone has the water and all that, and then you've got the means to irrigate and all that. I think that's where the business opportunity really comes in.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you advise? Best times to farm and make money in Zambia. What do you advise?
Well, there's what is called contrarian farming.
Okay.
Or contrarian investment. It's not something that you should do very often. You have to obviously think. But contrarian farming basically entails that you move in an opposite direction.
Right.
When people are now, dusting off their shoes and whatever, like, okay, now it's off season.
Yeah.
You come in. So I would actually say the period between June to about November is very tough for an average farmer.
Okay.
Because they don't have the water. They're really rooted to, within the season.
Right.
So I'd actually say that's a huge opportunity if you've got the means to do irrigation and all that, because not everyone, unfortunately, can afford to farm, commercially.
Exactly.
So that period is
Between
usually June to about November, December, because those are very tough months. It's off season.
Right.
There's no rain. So if you can structure something within that period where you've got your irrigation, you've got the growing environment, maybe greenhouse farming if you're doing horticulture, I think that's a very good time to be in, because then there's less competition, since the bulk of the farmers actually confined to the rain season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any unique crop you were growing in Zambia we don't have in Ghana?
Well, cocoa I think is not a big issue for us.
Okay, you grow cocoa in Zambia?
No, we don't.
You
have.
don't?
No.
You don't have cocoa in Zambia?
It may be there, but it's not a big thing.
Okay.
But I see that here it's
our
big
cash
thing.
cow.
Yeah, exactly. so for us, our cash cow, I'd actually say it's the big thing is maize.
Really?
Yeah, maize
Okay.
is our staple crop, because that's what people eat every day, in their meal. So I'd actually say cocoa is one outlier.
Right.
It might be there, but it's not a big thing. But here, it's
Are there
massive.
any foreign fruit or vegetables that you are growing in Zambia? Like the strawberry?
Yeah. That has come in. I think when I started farming 15 years ago, we had these theories that, no, you can't grow strawberries in Zambia. But I actually did, grow strawberries. I think if you go on our YouTube channel, the Panuka Agribiz YouTube channel, you actually find where I have documented how I did grow, strawberries. So we've seen that. And also the kind of products that we farm ourselves at Panuka Farm, because we specialize in mainly salads.
Okay.
So you have iceberg lettuce, we do the sweet pepper, and then we also do the long English cucumber.
Right.
When I started, most of these were actually being imported. But then we've actually seen that, that there's been quite a lot of resurgence in this, and there's quite a lot of other horticulture farmers that have come in it. And right now, things like, pawpaw have not traditionally been grown commercially in Zambia. And we just established a plantation for that. So I think those are some of the products that have traditionally not been done at the commercial scale. They've been around, but usually approached from someone having 1-2 trees of pawpaw and not really having like a big, plantation. So, but I think the landscape is changing as people are looking for different avenues to sell, produce. But again, therein lies, potential opportunities for people that would want to come into Zambia to do fruit farming, do value addition, and of course be an off-taker for most of the struggling, smallholder farmers that might not meet the litmus test for most of the bigger guys like the chain stores. Yeah.
I see. How is the issue of labor? Because an investor, I'm coming with my husband and my children, and Mr. Panuka is convincing me to come to Zambia.
Yeah.
If I arrive in Zambia and I manage to secure, let's say, 50 acres of farmland, and I'm going to start work, I will need the human factor to make my business successful. How is it like? Because in Ghana, we are really struggling with getting labor on our farms. What's the situation like in Zambia?
Well, I mean, labor is readily available, provided you also do due diligence in terms. But otherwise, I think there's a lot of people that require, jobs. And I think I wouldn't say it's such a big issue. It's just the quality of the labor. But right now, there's a lot of these graduates that are coming in from, graduates, schools of agriculture. We've actually been running a graduate trainee program for the last 4 years where we bring in graduates from university and bring in for a 6 months program on our farm.
Okay.
So the biggest challenge that is usually there is just maybe the lack of exposure to some specialized agricultural, ventures. But I think if you're willing to also provide this kind of mentorship, I wouldn't say it's such a big issue.
Okay.
So there just must be a bit of patience, and of course, unemployment is still a big issue. So therein lies, an opportunity for you. So I wouldn't say it's a big issue. Yeah.
Okay. So how many years has it been now since you moved from military to farming? How many years has it been?
It's close to 16 years now.
16. Whoa, that's not small, Jenny, man. With how many acreage of land available to you?
Interesting question, and I'm glad you've asked that question because and this is one of the things that I address in my book on farming as a business. One of the things that you actually note is that in Africa, people are still land constrained.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're trying to actually bring belief is farming is about productive use of the land, whether it's 2 acres that you've got, whether it's 5 hectares or 100 hectares. And this is something that we have not mastered because in Africa, unfortunately, we still see land size as a proxy for being a good farmer.
Okay.
So in our case, we've got 2 pieces of land. I think one is 5 hectares and one is 20. But Panuka, as an enterprise, has actually been known for the 5 hectares.
Okay.
Because of the way we've managed it and the kind of farming that we also do, which has also been able to attract quite some high-level dignitaries. I think we had the World Bank Managing Director coming to the farm. We also hosted the U.S. Vice President on the farm.
Yeah. I mean, give me my share of the benefits that came.
So it's not so much about the size of the land, but what you do with that land.
Okay.
And I think this is one of the take-home messages that we do in our mentorship for people to actually see value, even on smaller pieces of land. And the question is, when you've got that land that you've got, it's a question of what can I do with this land?
Okay.
I mean, you can't go into maize farming when you've got 5 hectares because by its nature, if you're looking at commercial production of maize, you require quite huge pieces of land. So again, those are some of the intelligent questions that you need to actually take into account if you're really looking at farming as a business. Like, what do I need to do in relation to the size of land that I've got, which will make commercial sense. Yeah.
Indeed, it's not about the bigger size of land, but of course, no matter how small it is, what you are able to make out of it. This is Farming Today on the Ghanaian Farmer TV. My name is Enyonam. When you see me, remember to call me Ghana's finest farmer. But if I go to Zambia, call me Ghana's finest farmer. Shout out to my girlfriends in Zambia, Manda, and all the other girls I've been following. I can't wait to see you.
Yeah.
But in my studios is an ex-military man. He's a chartered accountant, and he's presently a farmer. And he's mentoring a lot of younger ones aspiring to become agripreneurs. He also has a book. We'll be diving that briefly into the book, Farming as a Business. And he's doing amazing things. He's in Ghana briefly. He'll be going back. But I hope to visit him, spend some time in Zambia.
You're extremely welcome.
And have a look at what they are doing. I'm going for a quick bit, but let me remind you of Rocco Nano Urea, our sponsor. This is a liquid fertilizer. Instead of going to buy the big one that looks like a cement bag, please stop buying it and buy this. Is a technology that is being used, in a lot of countries, and they are getting the result. With a little drip of water, people would wait for bigger rains before they apply the other urea, the solid one. But this one, you will have to mix it with water. And so with a little rainfall, you mix this and you apply 3 weeks after your transplant. That's the first time you do the application. And then 2 weeks interval later, you do the second application. If you want to buy this in, large quantity, reach out to me on 0554-830431. And you can apply on all crops, from maize to rice to cotton, tomatoes, any vegetable, any tree crop. But it has to be something you have transplanted 3 weeks after transplanting. We stress on the time to apply so that you get the best out of it. You get higher income, you get increased production, it enhances your crop quality, easy to transport, environmentally friendly, and of course less chemical. This is what you need as a farmer. I'm going for a quick breather. When I come back, we'll talk a bit more about farming as a business, book that has been written, launched in Zambia by Mr. Panwika. I'll be right back. Thanks for staying. If you just tune in, you're watching Farming Today, and we are trying to understand the farming, concept in Zambia, especially for those of you who want to go and invest in agriculture or agribusiness. Mr. Panuka, so most of the questions I get from our diaspora viewers is, how much do I need to lease a land? Or how much do I need to buy a land? How much is enough for me to actually start off something small, just like you said, being it 1 acre or 2 acre, just to test the waters? But let's talk about leasing, for instance. If I'm coming to lease a land, how much should I be prepared for?
It depends on two factors.
Okay.
One, is it on title?
Right.
Or if it's not on title. Of course, naturally, if it's on title, it gives you comfort, especially if you are coming into the country.
Okay.
I would actually probably say if you're a diasporan, or an investor coming into Zambia, probably stick to land that is on title.
Okay.
But for the locals, it's cheaper to get traditional land, and then you find a way of converting it. But then there's too many processes to get it on title, and unfortunately, it's not like a clear cut answer in terms of what the price looks like. There's quite a lot of heterogeneity in the pricing, and also depending on the location, so it's a bit difficult to really put a
cap.
Yeah, a cap on
Right.
on the price,
Okay.
because one moment there's it's so much in dollars. One moment, there's so much noise in
Zambia,
the pricing. We use Zambian kwacha. But then people sometimes have a tendency to
Request for dollar. Okay. Great.
But otherwise, we use Zambian.
Okay, so now let's talk about this. It's farming as a business. And this is a practical handbook for first-time farmers in developing countries. Mr. Panuka.
Yes.
Is it that you have finished eating food and you decided to author a book for us? Or what inspired you? What was the inspiration?
So, I think over the last 15 years that I've been farming, there are these frequently asked questions that comes to you repetitively, but very key questions.
Right.
And then I realized one of the difficult issues that we have, especially amongst us as farmers, one, we don't have time to actually document the lessons that we picked
Exactly.
up.
Yeah.
And those that are coming after us tend to start regurgitating the same mistakes that we made. And so as part of just documenting our case studies on how not to farm
Okay.
and how to farm,
Right.
but with a focus much more on how to farm as a business, decided to actually document our journey and some of the things that I have learned as an agripreneur, so that those that are coming after us, that are starting to farm, if you are retiring, because I mean, as you know, in Africa, you find that farming is more or less like a default investment venture for retirees.
Exactly.
But we've actually seen classical, and spectacular examples of how not to retire and go into farming. People have gone into destitution because their pension money is wrongly deployed.
Okay.
And so what really inspired me is to make sure that our people don't get it wrong. You know, and sometimes farming is actually seen like a fantasy. Like it's one of those very bling bling, you know, investments. And sometimes some people, the way they even portray their farms is like everything is just smooth sailing.
Right.
And so we wanted to put a voice on what has been our experience, the low moments, the high moments, and basically just mainstream realism into how to farm.
Okay. Okay. So when was this book launched?
It's been a year plus now since we launched it, and I think it's done extremely very well. We've gotten good feedback on the practicality of the book and the fact that it's very contextual to African, you know, setup, because some of the issues that you will note when you farm, issues around even just social issues, how you relate with the locals, you know, the chiefdoms, the headmen, has a huge impact on whether you actually farm in peace or in pieces.
Exactly.
Yeah. So these are some of the nuances that you will not find in Western, you know, books in agriculture, and so we've mainstreamed some of these issues that you would not typically find in an agriculture related book that is written, you know, from the West. So it's very contextual to Africa, but then it brings in some of the business ethos, and basically we've revisited the 4 factors of production, but with practical nuances, like land. You know, issues around location and different other nuances around land, because if you get it wrong on land, then you'll not farm as a business. It's the same thing with labor. One of the things that we emphasize, especially in chapter 2 of this book on labor, is that regardless of how much money you throw at the enterprise and how beautiful your farm machinery is, for as long as you get it wrong on labor, then you're going nowhere in your farming journey. Forget it. It won't work. So we deal with those nuances. I think in chapter 3, then we look at capital, look at the issue around white elephants that characterize quite a number of farms. Where you go on a farm, you find empty fish ponds, you find, you know, humongous chicken runs that are empty. Lots of, you know, white elephants, as we call them in, you know, project finance. And of course, some of the key frequently asked questions around agripreneurship skills. So that's basically what we've, you know, documented in this book. And the value proposition is the fact that this has been written by your fellow farmer, and so it's sanitized from all manner of lullabies.
Great. How about those who can't read or write? Have you considered them? How did they become beneficiaries of this?
Well, I mean,
knowledge you have here.
We are open to partnerships to translate this in some of the local languages. It's not something that we've done, given that right now we don't have a very good investment, you know, case for that. But I think we are amenable to really partner with some of the cooperating partners and other, you know, entities like governments to translate this into, you know, African languages. But we think it would really be a very good read. But also then we have now these digital courses. We've just done a course called Farming as a Business, you know, Blueprint, which is a video-based, you know, course running on our app, Panuka AgriBiz, which they can find on our Play Store, and we're just now getting it on Apple as well. But it's a mirror of this book. But then we are also hoping we can partner with entities so that we translate some of these courses in local languages. So that, you know, our people can, you know, get this information cascaded. You know,
let's talk briefly also about the project you launched just yesterday with the UNDP. What is it about?
No, this is around conservation of nature. It's called Biodiversity Finance Initiative, and it's now operating in about 133, you know, countries, and then it's just coming into Ghana. So this is about conserving nature, and agriculture apparently has been one of the worst drivers of nature loss, given that I don't know what the tonnage on average is here in terms of maize production, but you will note in most of the African countries the productivity of maize is still around 1.8 metric tons per hectare. But in Southern Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe, there's what is called the 10-ton club.
Okay.
There's farmers that can actually get to 10 tons per hectare of maize. And then here you are, the average national is about 1.8. So it means some of the people, to try and cover up in terms of productivity, they're actually using, clearing trees and whatever to try and get to the right, productivity. So this program is looking at conservation, but then on the financing side of nature.
Okay, we look forward to be your media partner to create awareness. Mr. Panuka, this one, it is on your lab.
Of course.
You have to recommend that. So we'll be able to do the awareness creation about it.
Exactly.
Lastly, how is the interest of young people coming up in the area of agriculture? Because in Ghana, in recent times, corporate people like yourself, youngsters, and now the mindset is beginning to change, considering farming as business, even with still some bottlenecks here and there. How different is the case in Zambia?
I think that the enthusiasm is there amongst young people to really get into farming. The only issue is that they're not sure about whether they can actually make a living out of it.
Okay.
And I think the biggest challenge is that, really farming as a business requires quite a bit of money.
Exactly.
Given that there's a lot of capex, the capital expenditure that you need to start and run, an enterprise. But of course, the scale matters. But I think given the right, tools, facilitation on access to land and capital to start, I think the interest is there. The challenge is this barrier on land, and of course the machinery, inputs, the working capital. I think that's one of the biggest, barriers. But we've actually seen quite huge interest amongst the youngsters to really get into this space. And this is where, again, government comes in to try and make sure that those that have genuine interest, because again, with farming, it has to be genuine interest. If you're just seeing it opportunistically, unfortunately, you get your fingers bent. So it's not a business you go in to try and just find, like luck. So it's really huge, and we like that. But this is the more reason why we have now done this app, the Panuka AgriBiz app, to try and also pass on this information to the youngsters. They're always on phone and whatever. So if they download our app, we have quite a number of courses that really walks them through, one on risk management fundamentals for a farming enterprise. We have one also on fundraising, options and strategies for agripreneurs. And then we have one also on accounting and financial management. As they say, farming is a business.
Yes.
And you can't manage anything if you can't measure it. And this is why we have an accounting and financial management course. And then now we have a mirror of this course on farming as a business blueprint, how to unlock factors of production for a farming enterprise. And we think the medium that we're using to digitize these courses should actually awaken the interest of the youngsters to go into farming, but also making sure that we minimize the startup-related, mistakes that come with infancy. The fact that you just don't know how this thing works, and so this is where our mentorship, comes in, and we're really looking forward to great partnerships with yourselves and others to try and make sure that the youth come into the agricultural sector, but they come the right way. But then the other partners like government and other partners can help them in terms of access to finance, and the capital expenditure that is needed to really start a farming enterprise. Because that's one of the biggest barriers. You can have the interest, but the means to start is a challenge, including access to land.
If I'm coming to Zambia, what will be the atmosphere? I mean, when you arrived in Ghana, what was the atmosphere? The reception from people, the food, culture. You've not spent so many times, so I kind of...
I've picked up quite...
Great. What would you tell me if I'm coming to Zambia? What are some of the things I would pick up? Immediate ones.
The first thing is that you see that people are hospitable. I mean, even here, I can actually pick that. I mean, I haven't picked up any, issues around people. People are warm, friendly. And that's Zambia for you. People are extremely very friendly. And I always tell people that for as long as you can also pick up one vibe in terms of how you greet people, greet them in their local language, then that's the keys to the doors. But generally,
Okay.
people are extremely very nice,
Right.
and that's one of our assets on our balance sheet as a nation is peace, and also being hospitable, and
Okay.
that I can guarantee you,
Great.
you get that. Besides, obviously. Calling you to come to the Victoria Falls
Right.
and see some of these natural wonders that we have.
Okay.
Lovely country it is.
Lovely country it is, and that's Mr. Panuka. In fact, the other name.
You didn't even ask me what Panuka means. But,
I'm just mentioning it. In fact, I didn't ask her, what's Panuka? What does it mean?
so in local language in Zambia, Panuka means being clever, being innovative.
Ah.
So there's a tribe called Tonga in Zambia, in
Okay.
the southern part of Zambia.
Their tribe called what?
It's called Tonga.
Hey.
What does
Don't
it mean?
say this thing, Ghana.
Really? It means something else.
You see my cameraman is laughing.
Now, interestingly, Panuka in
Okay.
Swahili
Right.
has probably
A funny meaning,
it means something else, but
Okay.
but generally is to expand.
Okay.
But when I say Panuka in East Africa, people laugh and go giggly.
Okay.
So I'm interested to understand what Tonga means, but that's
Not
a
on
tribe.
camera. I'll tell you.
But that's a tribe. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what would be your final message, Ghanaians who are watching this program, Africans living abroad, who are trying to get to know different African countries that they can relocate and go and invest? What will be your final message to them?
So my final message is that Zambia is a very hospitable, country, and besides just being hospitable, I think there's plenty investment opportunities, and right now also the political climate is quite ripe for those that are bringing in FDI, trying to invest in Zambia. But besides that, the climate itself is also good for agriculture. So provided you look at creating these partnerships, I think you actually have a very enjoyable kind of investment. But over and above that, we are there ourselves in terms of guiding you on how to farm and farm as a business. And so if you're a diaspora and wherever you are, most of our products are now digitized. If you're looking at the book, you can go on Kobo, then just look for farming as a business,
Right.
Bruno Mweemba. But then you can also find it on our app, the Panuka Agribiz Hub, where you can download and basically enroll for some of the courses that I talked about on farming as a business. But then we also have social media, platforms. Panuka Agribiz, YouTube channel, over 200 videos where we
Right.
teach quite a lot of things. And our vibrant Facebook page, Panuka Agribiz Hub.
Okay.
Yeah, so, come to Zambia and we're there to partner with you, provide much needed mentorship, and we can also link you up to some of the different government departments. The Zambia Development Agency, Ministry of Agriculture, and many others that would help you to find your way in the agriculture space.
Great. I love that. If you're out there and you don't want to come to Ghana, Zambia is inviting you.
Yeah.
You're good to go to Zambia, but remember to reach out to Mr. Bruno, or he's popularly known as Mr. Panuka. If you go to Facebook, you can also search for him. He's available on all YouTube, of course. He's there. You can find him, get in touch with him, and he will guide you moment you arrive in Zambia. But Mr. Bruno Mweemba is a development finance expert and a chartered accountant with expertise in green and project finance with corporate 20 years. So it's not easy. He has he has a lot to share.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very happy to have met him. We are one people from different countries,
Of course.
and that's what matters.
This is Africa.
If we are championing Africa, these collaborations must happen every now and then.
Exactly.
I look to going to Zambia very soon. But I want to say a big thank you to our proud sponsor, Rocco Nano Urea. And you can respond as caring for you. So Rocco Nano Urea is a liquid fertilizer that provides nitrogen to your plant through its leaves. The technology ensures that the plant absorbs 80% of the nutrient. Rocco Nano Urea is a substitute to the solid urea. The benefit: higher yield, increased income, less chemical, environmentally friendly. It enhances your crop quality, and of course you can easily pick it up and then go to where you're going. The dosage: mix 2 ml to 4 ml of Rocco Nano Urea in 1 liter of clean water. Remember, the first foliar spray is 3 weeks after your transplanting. Okay, so at the vegetative stage you have to do that, and then for better result, wait for 2 weeks after, and then you apply the second one. If you want some to buy, the Ghanaian farmer, I'm selling one. Okay, so call me on 0554830431, or you can call JK Industries Limited on 05026701111. It's all over on my social media page. This is Roko. It doesn't matter what you're into, so long as you're into maize, you're into rice, cotton, you are into tomatoes, pepper, onion, cabbage, carrot, everything that needs urea. Forget about the solid urea. That one, without rain, you can't apply you. And even if you apply, it takes time before it melts into the soil. So why don't you come for Roko? The price is very, very affordable. Come for Roko with a little drizzling. You are good to go to apply. And this one, it is the leaves that takes the nutrient. And so your plant will be good. I tell you, put a bet on this and get a couple of bottles for your farm. We are working on the NPK. It will soon be in the market. But until then, thank you for making time with me. If you're planning to go to Zambia, refer to this video and reach out to Mr. Bruno, aka Mr. Panuka, which the meaning in Ghana you know already. My name once again is Enyonam. But when you see me in town, call me Ghana's finest. We'll be streaming this, having insightful conversations around agriculture. Until then, thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Pleasure mine to be on this esteemed platform.
Okay, bye-bye.